Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Marriage Matters. So, we're here back another week, another episode.
Yes.
Another episode of tips and tricks to help you maximize and enhance your marriage and your relationships.
Yes.
Yeah.
All of that.
All of those things.
Yes.
So, my name is Glenn Coleman. For those of you who don't know, maybe watching for the very first time, I'm Glenn Coleman.
And I'm his wife.
This is my wife,
Tanya Coleman.
My good wife, Tanya Coleman.
You got a bad wife?
My only good wife.
Again.
My one and only good wife. That still don't sound right now.
No.
This is my wife.
Sounds like you have other wives.
How should I say it? No, I only got one.
Okay, that's what I was making sure we were clear on that.
I only got one. Yeah. My good thing.
Thank you. That's good right there.
All right, girl. Watch out now. So anyway, so we come to you every week just bringing you information. Is that better?
Yes.
Okay. To help you enhance your marriage. Mm-hmm. And as always, we just want to encourage you every week and maybe just help you whatever you're doing to make it better.
Yes, always making it better.
Always make it better. That's one thing, if we said a couple of weeks ago, if you're not growing together, you're growing apart.
Right.
So, we want to just give you some tools that'll help you grow together in your marriage. Mm-hmm. Speaking of tools, that'll help you grow together in your marriage.
Yes.
We've been reading these books by Shanti Feldhahn.
And her
husband Jeff Feldhahn. And the books are for women only and for men only. Mm-hmm. And really, the books are designed for the for men only book is designed for men. Mm-hmm. It's a book about women. It's written for men, and the for women only book is a book for women written about men.
Right.
But what we decided to do, in which they even recommend doing this in the books, is that you read your book first. So I'm reading the For Women Only book first.
Right.
And Tanya's reading the For Men Only book
first.
And she's making notes and highlights in the book. And I'm doing the same thing in this book. So we're going to swap. And whenever she reads this book, she'll see all of my notes and things that are important to me as a man. And I'll be able to see her notes, things that are important to her or things that really apply to her as a woman. And it's doing things like this, guys, that really will take your marriage to the next level. Because even in reading this book about men for women, I am I'm learning some things about myself.
Yes, me too.
And the way I think and the way I process, I'm learning, I see that's why I think this way.
Right.
And that's why. And so our goal is what we're going to do when we finish reading these books, we're going to do a show dedicated, maybe a couple of shows dedicated to these books. Right. But these are the things that you have to do, to grow your marriage. It's about having, and this book, it kind of helps you do that, having the tough conversations, the things that, a lot of times you don't want to talk about.
Or you don't know that you should be
That's good. You don't know that you should be talking about those things. But these books help you do that. And there are several other books that we recommended on this podcast. But this is the one that we're reading right now. We encourage you to get these books, you and your spouse. You can get them on Amazon or at Shanti. I think it's, I'll put up a graphic, but I think it's Shanti.com, I think is her website. But anyway, really good read. We've really been enjoying reading these books.
I agree with you. For me, reading this is even giving me some insight into some things about myself, giving me insight into some things that I have maybe questioned as to why you don't understand certain things, about me, or how communication happens, or how, we think differently. This is helping me to get a lot of insight into those types of things. So it really is a great resource, a great tool. It's a great read.
Yeah. And it's okay. We have to learn to accept that everybody doesn't think like you.
Right. Absolutely.
And everybody doesn't process like you. So what we have to do is learn how to communicate to that person in a way that they can understand and comprehend what you're trying to say.
Right.
And you have to understand that, well, this is not, we don't want to talk about it on this podcast.
No.
But
we don't.
Get these books. And it'll be great for your relationship.
Yes,
great thing for you to do together.
Pick it up.
And
women only,
just
for
spending
men
time
only.
together, doing something together in common. So moving together. Anyway, so let's get into today's topic.
Yes.
And what we're talking about today is whatever you like.
Whatever you like.
Whatever you like. So I got that from, some of you may remember this from the movie Coming to America.
Of course we do.
Really great movie. I always say Coming to America, I know from my generation, was probably one of the most quoted movies ever. Mm-hmm. Taste the soup. What's wrong? Just taste the soup.
Right.
What is that? Velvet? All this stuff. Mm-hmm. Anyway, but there's this scene when Eddie Murphy's character is meeting his bride, this arranged marriage, and this young lady has been groomed to be his queen since she was born. And so they go into this room and he asks her, what kind of music do you like? Right. And she says, whatever you like. And he says, what kind of food do you like?
Whatever you like.
So he goes to this pork like a dog. Mm-hmm. So anyway, I don't want to. Okay, I'm not going to ask you to pork like a dog. But anyway, so we're talking about whatever you like. Because and here's the deal, our jobs as spouses, there's this scripture in, I think it's 1 Corinthians, where Paul basically, he says something to the effect of, he says, when you're unmarried, you are busy about, you're all about doing the will of God.
Right.
He says, but then if you're married, then you are consumed with, basically paraphrasing here, he says, you consume with pleasing your spouse.
Right.
Not that when you get married, you no longer do the will of God, but what he was saying is that you can't just do whatever you want to do and go how you want to go.
You have an additional responsibility. Right.
And so, and that saying that is that, in marriage, our responsibility is to make sure that we're pleasing our spouse, making sure that we're putting their needs ahead of ours, and making sure that their needs are being met.
Right, and the submission, which the Bible talks about in Ephesians chapter 5. We talk a lot about the woman submitting, which it does say that, but it also says for you to submit to one another, and it talks about you making adjustments, you sacrificing yourself for your wife, and the wife making adjustments for the husband. And so all of that entails that, as Paul said in the scripture, I'm not going to be fully able to just go all out in everything that I do is for the church, so to speak.
Yeah. So I guess what I really want to talk about in that is, where do you strike that balance, as in, I'm pleasing my spouse, but at the same time, because what you don't want is to, I don't want to say lose yourself, but you don't want to just go along with things that you don't always agree with.
Sure.
You don't want to just say things that are automatically going to make your spouse feel comfortable. That's always making you feel
and it's not authentic to you. Yeah.
It's not authentic to you. So where do you strike that balance? And I want to please my spouse. I want to put their needs ahead of mine. I want to do things to make sure that their needs are being met.
Sure.
But at the same time, I don't want to just, one of the great example is one of the podcasts that we listen to a lot is Kevin and Melissa Fredericks with Kevin on Stage, Miss Kevin on Stage, with the Love Hour podcast. And she was talking about how, for, I forgot how many years it was they were married. And Kevin would buy her these gifts, and she didn't like the gifts, but because she didn't want to hurt his feelings. Right. She was trying to please him, so
right.
she never said anything.
Right.
But it was building up some things on the inside of her. So I guess that's that balance I'm talking about. At the same time, we want to please our spouse. We want to put their needs ahead of ours. We want to
we want to make sure that our spouses are taken care of, that they're happy.
Yes.
And you said, the biggest part is meeting their need, as far as my job, as far as your spouse.
Yeah.
I think for me, the quote unquote balance, if there is a balance, I don't know if there is a balance, but the best way to go about doing that, one, is making sure that you and I are on the same page. You know what I'm saying? Another way of doing that is making sure that, one, I'm being vulnerable, that I'm being honest, I'm being authentic, and I'm not just going with the flow for the sake of not rocking the boat and keeping the peace. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and I guess that's the point I was making. And you said it really great, just for the sake of keeping the peace.
Right.
And we don't want to do that. So can you give maybe some examples of how to strike that balance? With I'm gonna hold my peace just to not, so I don't want to rock the boat, or I don't want to make my spouse angry, and making sure that you're speaking up and making sure that your voice is being heard.
Right. So, times where people may find themselves doing that. There are a million different scenarios where that may happen. It could be that my mother may invite us over to her home for a holiday, and you had in your mind that we were just going to be at home for the holiday, resting, just us and the kids, and just rejuvenating and enjoying that downtime together. But you didn't communicate that. And so I didn't know that that's what you had in your heart and your mind. So
Are you venting on this show right now?
What do you mean?
Is this scenario, are you kind of trying to tell me something?
No. I'm just joking. Don't start them.
Okay. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So, but I'm just using it as an example because that is very common. There's so many heated fellowship moments around what are we doing for the holidays, and you don't want to disappoint your family members, and the spouse kind of just goes along with it. It's not that you don't love my mom or you don't want to, but this time I thought we would do something quietly at home, or was hoping we would, but I didn't communicate that to you. And so over time, when that consistently happens, then you get the big explosion, and it's like, what's going on? Well, why do we always have to do this, and this? Like, well, I thought you enjoyed that. You never told me that you didn't. So
I guess, with that in mind, I guess one of the big things I'm hearing you say is going back to communicating.
Absolutely.
And making sure that even in, because here's the deal. I'll use this example. If I tell one of my daughters, clean the room, clean your room, and they clean the room, but it's with an attitude, then I'm like, that's still not obedience. Obedience with an attitude is.
It's not. It dismantles the thing that I have told you to do, the way you have done it, your attitude about doing it. It dishonors the relationship. It dishonors my role in your life.
And so I guess so in that same light, so if you're going along with it, but your heart, see, here's the deal. It's all about motive.
Right.
And I always say this, why you do is more important than what you do.
Absolutely.
Because you can do, let me say it like this, you could do the right things for the wrong reasons, and you can do some wrong things
for the right
reasons.
Right.
So it's all about motive. Right. It's all about where your heart is. You know, the Bible talks about it. It talks about the heart a lot. It talks about you know, wherever you're. How does it say?
Wherever your treasure is.
No, not that one. It talks about guard your heart with all diligence, for out of it flows issues of life.
Issues of life, right.
And it also talks about in Proverbs how, you know, a man can talk good, you know, with you,
right,
but his heart can be far from you or against you. So I guess what I'm trying to say is it's all about motive.
It's all about motive.
And so I guess maybe that's the balance in all of this is motive. And so are you if you're compromising, listen to me, if you're compromising just to keep the peace, that compromise is going to lead you to a dark place.
Right, because all along while you're compromising, you're inwardly unhappy. And that unhappiness, which may be momentary, but it builds up into another level of frustration and aggravation, annoyance, all of those things. And like I said earlier, eventually that is going to come out in an emotional, explosive manner, or you're going to shut down and stop communicating verbally, but you're communicating, you know, in many different other ways, but you're not communicating with words. And I wanted to, because we had said an example of how to do that, you know, appropriately. And it is very simple of communicating and having a conversation, you know, that, you know, honey, I really feel like, you know, I love your mom. I enjoy, you know, spending time with her. However, this Christmas, I would rather for it to be us at home, us and the kids. We don't get a lot of that time. I'm really tired. These are my only few days off. So I'm really not in the mood to visit right now. You know, that's honest. It's not, you know, you're not accusing anyone of anything. There's no anger being spewed out. You're not saying anything derogatory or negative about anyone's family or anything like that. You are simply expressing your need assertively, not aggressively, to your spouse. You know, so
yeah. And going back to what I was saying earlier, if your heart is not in it, then it's like as your spouse, I don't, and this is the only way I know how to say it, but I don't want that.
Right.
You know, I don't want you doing things just because that's not truly you.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
It's not all of you, and that's not fair. It's not fair to you, and it's not even fair to me, because I'm not gonna get the best of you.
Right. That's so true, honey.
I'm not gonna get the best of you.
Yeah. That's so true.
And it's all about, you know, this. It's all about marriage. It's all about dying to self.
Yep.
And in that scenario you just gave, you have to die to self, because you have to put your frustration down.
Right.
And because a lot of times I think we don't communicate out of frustration. And it's like, you know, I'm sick and tired of talking about this. Well, you can't get sick and tired of talking about it.
Right.
And you have to keep the discussion open until you and your spouse can come to a resolution.
Yeah, come to a resolution, come to an agreement. You know, what works best for us. Okay, I get it. I understand. You know, that is not what you want to do this Christmas. I respect that. I accept that, you know, and we'll decide, we will do what you're communicating to me, what your need is right now. Your need right now is quality family time with your spouse and your children, and some downtime to rest your mind and your body. You're communicating to me your need. Therefore, as your spouse, I'm going to affirm that need, and I'm going to make sure that that need is met. You know, and we can talk about maybe when is a good time to go and to celebrate this moment, you know, with our family members, you know, or the next time that we're able to get together, to have those conversations, to communicate that to one another, and to appropriately communicate it to your family. You know, you don't want to throw your spouse out there under the bus and say, "Oh,
well, we would come, but she didn't want to come."
Exactly. That is not the communication.
That is not.
We have to show support, and we have to show that we are on the same side. We're on the same team. We're not against you guys. You know, it's not that at all. However, my husband needs some rest.
Yeah, and make it, and you have mentioned this to me before about making our own traditions.
Yes,
you know, as a family,
that's important.
And it is, and I had to, and you know, a lot of times I was doing like even with the family thing, you know, going to family for holidays, and it wasn't necessarily that, you know, that's what I wanted to do, but I was really trying to make it easier on you.
Sure.
Because I would always tell her, I was like, well, you don't have to cook all that food, babe, you know. I have an aunt, shout out to Aunt D.
Aunt D, she always watches the show. Love you,
shout out Aunt D. I mean, this
done.
woman cooks like she's cooking for
the masses.
You know, and so like we could just go and but I was assuming some things about my spouse. And the thing about Tanya is she likes doing the holiday stuff.
Yes.
She likes cooking the food. She likes putting all the food out, and she likes decorating the house, and
that's relaxation to me.
And for me, it's just the opposite. I'm like, I hate. It's like, if I ain't gonna say I hate. That's a strong word.
That's a strong.
But it's like I don't have to have a Christmas tree,
and
I don't have to do all this stuff. I could just give the girls their presents in a bag and be like, here you go. But she enjoys
presents
that.
In a bag.
So I guess what I'm saying is. You know, I can't just, I guess, well, let me just say, so number one is communication.
Yes.
Number two is making your spouse's priorities your priorities. You know, because all of that other stuff, and I think maybe a lot of it, just to be honest, is, you know, I had all that growing up.
Sure.
And I don't know if you necessarily had as much as
I had it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I had it. I had it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I was just saying, maybe, you know, you wanted to get the girls that, and, you know, I don't know.
Yes, of course. I want to create the celebration of the spirit of Christmas for our children. You know what I'm saying? And as a parent, you want to do that for your kids, you know, and as a mother, that's a part of my nurturing and my loving to create those types of traditions, and it's creating memories because, as you can see, they don't stay small long.
Yeah. And you know what? And I don't know, man, I was reading, I don't know if I was reading this in a book or I heard it on a podcast or something, but this person was talking about how her daughter, they were on a boat ride or something, and she said her daughter was sitting there with her eyes closed and was like, and she was like, what are you doing? She's like, I'm making a mental picture of this, because you're right, it's the moments.
Yes.
You know, and so going back to my point, so I have to make that a priority. If it's important to Tanya, and I said this I think last week, if it's important to Tanya, it has to be important to me. And so even though for me it's not a big deal.
Right.
You know, all of the stuff of the holidays, and I really don't, I mean, I like it, but I don't have to have it, you know? But for her, she really enjoys that. And so I can't just say, well, you know what, you know, that's your thing, you go ahead and do that. Right. No, if it's important to her, I have to make it a priority.
Right. You have to engage in that.
And I think a lot of times, and it goes back to communication, I guess, but communicating that, because it wasn't until she told me that, you know, that, hey, this is not, I don't see this as work. I don't see this as, oh, I got to cook a meal for the family. I see that this is, like you said, it's recreation for her. She enjoys doing it. Right. So until she made that known to me, I just thought, you know, she was doing it out of obligation, but it wasn't out of obligation. It was out of love. And so that's the way she was expressing love to her family. So I had to make that. And it's also, like she said, it's a way for us to spend time together, you know? So, you know, even after, you know, because if you know, be honest, a lot of times, you know, after the Thanksgiving or whatever, it's like, I don't want to have to clean all that up. But even all of that, in her mind, that's us doing something together. Yeah. And even though I saw it as,
Work. You still see it as work.
But I do it though. And I do it.
You do
and
it.
I do it and again, it goes back to if my heart's not in it, then she doesn't want that.
Right.
And that's, oh man, this is kind of opening up now. Mm-hmm. But that's why, it's even like with, helping out around the house, mm-hmm. doing things around the house. And, a lot of times I know you may feel like, I shouldn't have to, I don't want to have to ask you, mm-hmm. To help me in this area.
Mm-hmm.
I want you to be able to see it and mm-hmm. say, I need to do that because that's just, I don't know. It's just, that's what we do because we're in this thing together. We're in a relationship.
Right. It's a team effort. And so anything that we see that is undone, then, we need to jump in, pitch in and help, I only have one restriction to that, and that is cutting grass. I do not cut grass. I know some of you ladies do. I am allergic to pushing the lawnmower. I'm not really allergic, but however,
that ain't even
it's
fair.
Not even a thing.
You know what I'm saying? That ain't even fair. But anyway, I understand.
That's just not my thing. I'll take the trash out. I'll pull the trash can to the road. I'll pull it back to the house. I'll do those different things, but cutting the grass is not my.
And it's okay. I'm good with that. But thank you for
you don't
helping
cook,
that.
so
yeah,
that's your
thing.
thing.
Just throw it right under the bus.
I wasn't saying it like that. I'm just saying
cook.
That's like your thing that you don't do.
And it's not that I don't do. I could if I wanted to, but I just don't enjoy doing it, and I don't want to. And I'm not good. I'm not good at it either.
Yeah, I'm not good at cutting grass either.
But that's different. Anybody can cut grass.
I don't know.
Anyway, we kind of getting off subject. So, number one, you have to communicate. Number two, you have to make whatever is a priority for your spouse. You have to make it a priority for you. Right. And you have a third point? Or we're just going to leave them with two?
I didn't know you were going to ask me. You were on a roll.
So we're going to leave you with two.
Communicate.
And make whatever your spouse. Because here's the deal, guys. Marriage is about dying to self. It's about putting yourself aside and making sure your spouse's needs are met. It's about making sure that your spouse is pleased.
Right. And you want to make sure that the entity of the marriage is intact. And it takes both parties to make sure that the entity of the marriage stays healthy and intact. Yeah. We don't want to slack, for lack of a better term, in the way that we manage our marriage and the way that we manage our relationship. And we don't want to take anything in this relationship for granted. And we want to make sure that we are very aware of how our spouse thinks and how they feel about, all issues, and everything that we have going on, so that we're very clear on what's going on in the relationship. If there are things going on in the relationship and I'm unaware of them, it simply becomes unfair to expect them of me,
Yep, that's good.
And vice versa,
And so that's what I was going to say, that, you want to do that. You want to make sure that your spouse you're putting your spouse's needs ahead of yours. Right. You're making sure that they're pleased. But at the same time, like we said earlier, we don't want the false humility. We don't want the false, because again, that's going to lead to even deeper problems. So even though, find that balance, and, I'm making sure my spouse is pleased. I'm taking care of my spouse's needs, but at the same time, I'm letting my thoughts and my opinions and my concerns be voiced.
I'm letting my needs be made known.
Yeah. And so, because like Tanya said, that could lead to a place and then it just you'll
Yeah, that frustration builds until it's a place of emotional, outburst.
Yeah, and then one day it's just like this one little thing happens, and you get the anger dump or the frustration dump, and you're like, whoa, where's this coming from? Well, it's coming from all those years of not really being honest, and that's what true relationship is, it starts with, I guess that's the third thing. Always be honest.
Be honest.
Be honest.
Vulnerable.
Be open and honest with your spouse. Be vulnerable. Yeah. So always communicate. Make your spouse priorities your priorities, and be honest.
Be honest. Yeah.
Be honest, because it's gonna be better. And even though in that moment your honesty may hurt your spouse's feelings.
Right.
Sometimes your honesty the truth, even though it's spoken in love, sometimes it still may, it may hurt
some feelings. Right.
But in the long run, it's going to make your relationship that much more healthy.
Right. And we need to talk through those feelings. Yeah. So, yeah.
So, that's all we got for you today.
That's it, guys.
So, hopefully you got something out of that. Remember, man, look, get those books. For men only, for women only. Shanti and Jeff Feldhahn. And that's something that I think will help you have those conversations.
Absolutely.
To help you start giving you the words. Sometimes you don't have the words to communicate what you're feeling.
Yeah.
This is a book. These two books I think will help you put some of those things into words. And that's all we got for you this week. So we'll see you next week. And always remember, your marriage matters.